I tell you, I was blown away. Like my entire perception of showing as I knew it completely flipped on its head. On the inside, everything in me was saying, but you can't scratch, but you have to go in and get the blue, but you have to go in and ride your absolute best or else. And the score is more important than the pain, than the anxiety, than the suffering, than the fear, than the teamwork, than any of those things. I did not expect this to be such an emotional video. Like, just sorry, off the bat. Wow. I did not believe until this weekend that you could be both a performance rider and also an ethical horseman. And boy, was I wrong. So I'm going to be breaking down for you in this video my new beliefs about why I think you can actually be an ethical horseman and be a performance rider and show, and how to do those things simultaneously. I'm going to be talking about why I formed that wrong belief in the first place and how I got to this new belief that I hold now. And yeah, we have a lot to cover. So let's just jump in. Okay, finishing this from home because it is way too hot out there. Okay, so I grew up showing heavily, and I didn't really enjoy showing growing up. But for someone that like didn't really enjoy it, like I was showing constantly. It was just a lot of pressure. Like I remember both the pressure I put on myself as well as the like industry pressure and the cultural pressure and the pressure from my trainer and the pressure from my peers and the pressure from even my parents who are not very pressury people. But just like people would come watch. My grandparents were there, and it just felt like so much performance anxiety and so much performance pressure. I remember very distinctly not being able to eat on show days until after I had shown. And I just remember being so anxious and going in the show ring and just thinking, I just really hope that this goes well. And I remember like actually like blacking out in the show ring. And luckily I was a dressage rider. And so I could memorize my test. And so as long as I knew I memorized my test really well, if I blacked out in there, it didn't matter because I often remember coming out and I would just look at my trainer's face and I would try to read her face to know, did I do a good job or bad job? Because I couldn't even remember what I had done. Like it was that level of anxiety. But I did this all the time. It was constant. And so this is why I built my entire riding school around a non-competitive focus. We are a non-competitive riding school. I say it everywhere. And the reason is because I always believed that if our riding school was competitive, that we would have to go to shows every weekend and every lesson would be about the next show. And I never wanted that. I always wanted the lessons to be about what that horse and rider needed that day. And additionally, I always wanted our barn to feel cohesive and not to feel like our students were competing against each other in any way. I remember that feeling really hard growing up, like feeling like my friends were also my competitors and like having this weird, like, well, if I win, then they can't win. And if they win, then I can't win. And so there's this like really clear like division at shows. And so to me, that meant then we just couldn't show. And so that brings me to where I am now. I have a sold out riding school. We're doing great things. Our students are learning so much. We work on horsemanship and they have been showing an interest in showing. So now we go to this show and when I tell you I was blown away, like my entire perception of showing as I knew it completely flipped on its head. So as I said in the intro, I really believed that it was not possible to be both a good horseman and a good showman, that you had to pick, that you either had to centralize your horse or you had to centralize performance. And if you centralized performance, your horse became a tool and it was no longer a being that you were caring for and connected to. And if you centralized the horse, that you would then have to sacrifice showmanship and that you would not be able to perform as well. And why even go to a show if you're not going to win? It's not worth the time and the money, right? So this was the idea I had in my mind. So my students and horses taught me this weekend, which I just love when they teach me. And I'm always humbled by my horses and my students when I learn from them. And they taught me this weekend 3 really valuable lessons. The first one was the value of teamwork. So even though they were scored, I'm like feeling misty-eyed even just thinking about this. Even though they were scored individually, and even though no one was in the barns, and even though no one was looking, these people, both kids and adults, worked together non-stop all weekend. They helped each other feed, they helped each other muck, they helped each other saddle, they cheered each other on, they gave each other pointers in the show ring, they gave each other pointers in the warm-up. They worked like a team without me even having to say anything. It was just like instilled so deeply in their interactions with each other and their interactions with their horses that we were just a team. And that there was no question that we were a team and there was no competition between my kids. Like, I'm just so proud of them. Honestly, I'm trying not to cry right now. They made me really proud. And so that was amazing and just a lovely experience. And then the second one was that we can change our metrics of success. So growing up and my whole show career. So I showed all the way from the time I was 12 years old until the time I was 18. I showed in dressage very consistently, very regularly, and very seriously. And then when I went to college, they didn't have a dressage horse at my level at the time, and I didn't want to go backwards. It wasn't an option at the time to ship my horse to my college. And so I decided to try a new sport. So I switched to the horsemanship and reining team. And I did horsemanship and reining, all the bling and the slow and the pleasure and the loping and all the things. And it was really fun, but it was also very serious. And after that, I kind of burnt out really hard and I never showed again. So post college, never showed. And my metric of success was always the judge's metric of success. So if I walked away with a blue ribbon, high point for the day, if I qualified for championships, if I got a score that I was really proud of, if I got like a 7 or an 8 in my dressage test, those were my metrics of success. That was my way of knowing that I did well. My students this weekend, their metrics, again, I'm just trying not to cry. Their metrics of success were, did I do right by my horse? Did I show up for my teammate? Did I get in and try my best, even if I didn't win? Was I polite to the judge? Did I represent my barn well? These were their metrics of success. When I asked them at the end of the show what their highlights were, none of them even, and also I asked them what their highlight was and what the low point was, and none of them even brought up their places in the class. Wasn't even on the table for their metric of success. And that healed something very deep in me, that I realized in that moment that you can be both a wonderful horseman who centralizes your horse and a showman, and that there's actually like a lot of class and grace and something just so like magnetic about the showman that doesn't care about the score, that's just there truly for the experience. Because one thing to say we're just here for the experience, but then to like be kind of bummed when you get a bad score. And it's an entirely different thing to get a bad score and still be cheering for yourself because you went in and did a hard thing and you did it well. I'm like, I don't even know how to, like, full body chills. And then the third thing that I learned from my students is that it is possible to show and still put your horse first. So if you show, if you enter a class, you try not to scratch unless like someone's dying, right? Like if you entered the class, you finish, you do what you signed up for. And there were lots of teachers and students around us who were feeling nervous. Their horse was doing big spooks. There was even a couple of kids that fell off horses. And as is normal in showing, show must go on. They get back on and they go in the show ring and they do their next round. And there was never a question of that. My students, each of them at some point during the show, scratched again. Like, I'm just so dang proud of them. Scratched a class. I did not expect this to be such an emotional video. Like, just sorry off the bat. Wow. It's really healed some deep, deep wounds for me. So my students, each one of them at some point during the weekend, scratched a class because their horse was not up for it. Their horse was anxious. Their horse was gait sour. Their horse was buddy sour. Their horse was calling to the other horses. And they said, it would not be fair to my horse to take them in that show ring right now and expect them to perform because my horse isn't ready. And so I'm going to scratch this class. And that really got me, because on the outside, I'm trying to live by these values. And so I'm telling my students, we're just here for the experience. I'm telling my students, just try your best. And I don't care if you fail or if you don't get a good score. I'm telling my students, I'd rather see you be a good horseman than get a good score. I'm telling my students, always put your horse first. When they're telling me they want to scratch, I'm telling them like, okay, we can scratch. But on the inside, there is a showman, a performer who is not okay. So my inside and my outside were not agreeing. On the inside, everything in me was saying, but you can't scratch, but you have to go in and get the blue, but you have to go in and ride your absolute best or else. And the score is more important than the pain, than the anxiety, than the suffering, than the fear, than the teamwork, than any of those things, right? So my insides were still telling me that score was the most important thing. And on the outside, I'm telling my students these things that I don't actually believe. And my students somehow convinced through the course of this show, my insides to believe what my outsides had been saying all along. And that was like truly transformational. So all that to say, 3 big messages. Teamwork still applies even in solo sports. We can choose our own metrics of success, and your horse should always come first in and out of the show ring. And with that, I now am pondering my new show career. We've only been home for like 3 days, and I'm already thinking about how I can get myself back in the show ring with these messages and to take these forward, because I just think that they are so groundbreaking and transformational. And I wish that more people in the show world believed these. And so that's why I'm here sharing this message. And if this is a message that you want to pass on, I would love for you to like and share this video because it'll help broaden the reach. And, this is not my typical content. I'm normally talking a lot more about horse behavior and regulation and all these things. But I think that this also applies to showing because normally I'm talking about this in the context of being at home. And this really showed me that I can still be a regulated rider and I can still be considering my horse and I can still be in deep partnership with my horse and take that out to an externally focused um, arena. Literally. Thanks for bearing with me. I know this was a little rambly, and I will see you in the next video. Make sure to hug your horse for me.